Okay, was there a moment, a process that made you into a skeptic, or is it just something you've always been?
No, I've not actually. I used to be a believer. I think that's a fairly open secret. I'm not coming out of the closet there. Now, to the extent, just a small indication of the fact that I've got some kind of hard evidence to support the fact I was a believer. I remember as a sixth former at school, New Scientist ran a survey about their readers' attitudes towards parapsychology and the paranormal. And I was kind of into it enough to actually bother to fill it in and post it off, basically saying that, I thought this was a really important area and that we should do research, and basically very much from a kind of believer's perspective. Because I had a kind of general interest, I'd read various books. I remember thinking that Eric von Daniken's stuff was really brilliant. It was written in a book, so it must be true, mustn't it? I look back now and, oh my God, it's very embarrassing. But there you go. At the time, as a teenager, that's what I felt. And it wasn't really until I was doing my PhD at Leicester on a completely different topic, nothing to do with the paranormal. A friend of mine recommended a particular book by a Canadian psychologist called James Alcock. And the book was called Parapsychology, Science or Magic. I think it was published in 1981. Very good book, still well worth reading. And I remember reading this and kind of, it was one of those kind of, well, you see now, one of those life-changing moments with the benefit of hindsight, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for reading this book. And this is a social psychologist who basically showed that there was another side, there was another way to think about all these things, and that a lot of these psychological explanations were, in fact, I found really, really interesting. And I think I went from being a believer to being a fairly extreme skeptic. It was at that point that I realised there was a magazine called The Skeptical Inquirer, and I started to subscribe to that, and I learned about James Randi, and I read Flim Flam, and I read The Truth About Uri Geller, and realised there was a skeptical literature out there, even if maybe there were not quite so many skeptical books on the shelves at W.H. Smith's as there were pro-paranormal books. And I must confess, at the time I had kind of an attitude that all parapsychologists were completely incompetent and didn't know how to run an experiment and so on and so forth. I've now kind of modified that opinion because I've actually got to know a lot of parapsychologists, and a lot of them are highly intelligent people, and they do know about experimental design. There's a lot of good aspects to parapsychology. Having said that, I'm still not convinced that paranormal forces really do exist, but I think there's an interesting topic there for a kind of genuine, respectful debate between the kind of moderates on each side. And so, as I say, I've kind of gone from being a believer to being an extreme skeptic to going back towards the middle ground, but, I still edit the Sceptic magazine, and I've not seen anything yet that would convince me that paranormal forces really do exist. Having said that, one thing that's undeniable is that most of the population of Britain, of the Western world generally, and indeed most other cultures that we've ever looked at, either geographically or historically, a substantial proportion, typically a majority, do believe in what we would label as the paranormal, and a substantial minority claim to have had direct personal experience of it. And so as a psychologist, this is absolutely fascinating. What is going on here? Up until fairly recently, I'd say, with one or two notable exceptions, psychology hasn't had anything to say about those kinds of experiences, and certainly hasn't really taken any position with respect to paranormal claims other than a kind of knee-jerk, rejection of them. I think they deserve more serious attention than that, and the point is that if paranormal forces don't exist, then we can learn a hell of a lot about human psychology by studying these experiences and trying to understand them and get to grips with them.
Okay. Ever been impressed by a psychic?
I have been impressed by one or two. The vast majority, no, I have to say. They're just really, really, really unimpressive. I've said before that occasionally I've seen Gordon Smith, the psychic barber, as he used to be known, perform. And he sometimes, when he's doing his readings, comes up with information that seems to me to be a bit too specific to be just good old cold reading.
Right.
Now that either means, in my book, that he's a very good con artist, which is a possibility that I can't rule out, or that just maybe he's the real thing. Now he's somebody I really would like to kind of get to cooperate in a proper test. He's very busy, I'm very busy. You know, if we could get maybe some nice TV program, some TV company, I should say, to actually fund the research to make it worth Gordon giving up his valuable time to take part in a proper test, I'd be more than happy to be involved in doing that. Say the vast majority of self-proclaimed psychics that we've tested, are just unimpressive. They can't deliver the goods, no matter how big the claims and how confidently they're made. And we've tested quite a number over the years, again, typically for TV programs, because that's a situation where it actually costs quite a lot, both in terms of time and effort, but also in terms of just money and resources to set up one of these tests properly. So, of course, if a TV company are making a documentary about a particular psychic, they will be footing the bill for all that stuff, and so it makes it much more likely that you can do it and you do it properly. So we've tested the baby psychic, Derek Ogilvie. He's a guy who claimed that he could read babies' minds even before they had learnt to talk. I won't go into the details of the test. Suffice it to say that he just kind of performed totally at chance level and was very upset. He was in tears afterwards. I remember being there in this very building, where we did the test, comforting him afterwards, saying kind of, "Don't worry, Derek. None of your fans will take any notice of the test results at all. They'll all still believe you've still got psychic powers," which turned out to be true. I tested Chris Robinson, who claims that he could dream the future. He calls himself the dream detective. Again, he failed the test. We've tested dowsers. We've tested all kinds of people, and so far, zilch, nothing.
Okay. Just to say hello to people now that we're on air, apparently. Fantastic.
Hooray!
I'm Richard Godber here. This is the Skeptical Experience. I'm here with Professor Chris French, talking about skepticism in general and his unit, the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit. So, what you got going on at the APRU right now?
Well, basically, our research is there's two strands to it, really. One strand is that which I consider to be really the more mainstream anomalistic psychology, if that's not a contradiction in terms. And that's really focused on trying to understand ostensibly paranormal experiences and paranormal beliefs, but in terms of conventional psychological factors. And we've always got undergraduate projects and postgraduate projects and other ongoing work in those kinds of areas. Some of the other strand, which, as I say, is a minor strand, but still an important one, and one that we do put a lot of effort into, is actually directly testing psychic claims. Now, a couple of things in particular on that front at the moment. We are engaged in an ongoing test of telephone telepathy. Right. And we're really, really interested in getting participants for this. So if I could just describe what's involved. This is some work we're doing in collaboration with Rupert Sheldrake, who is a very controversial scientist who apparently has the golden touch and seems to get lots of positive results when he actually tests various claims relating to telepathy and other phenomena. The telephone telepathy thing, as you probably guess, refers to the not uncommon phenomenon where people sometimes before they answer the phone are convinced that they know who's calling even before they pick it up, even though there wasn't a call expected at that particular time. Now, the skeptics, including myself, would say, well, a lot of those experiences can be explained just in terms of it was a coincidence. The number of people you think about in a day and the phone doesn't go at all, or the phone does go and it's not that person, you forget all of those because they're non-events. When the phone goes and it is the person you were just thinking of, and particularly if it was somebody maybe that you've not heard from for a while, then you do wonder, wow, that was pretty amazing. Yeah, maybe it was a psychic link. Well, maybe. And of course the selective remembering and forgetting, all of the factors come into it. Sheldrake is fully aware of all those kind of factors, but still asks the question, well, might there be something in it anyway? And so he's collected data which he says shows that there really is something in it. And the basic design is very simple. The original studies that he did involved having one receiver and 4 potential callers, and at various pre-specified times, one of the 4 callers would be randomly selected, and they would make the call, and before the receiver picked the phone up, they'd have to say it's either Bob or Ted or Carol or Alice or whoever it is. And you'd expect a hit rate of 25%, 1 in 4, just by chance. And in some of the studies that Sheldrake reports, he says he gets hit rates way above that, up into 40-odd%.
Wow.
Now, the version we're doing at the moment, we have already done some previous work with Rupert, and we didn't get any positive results. But we're doing a mobile telephone version of it, which ought, in principle, to be easier. If any of your listeners wanted to take part, I'm afraid we don't want skeptics. We only want believers. The reason being that if there really was something in this claim, skeptics could deliberately screw up the results. Now, I know that skeptics wouldn't do that because they're all really nice people, but we have to have people who genuinely believe in this phenomenon, genuinely believe they've experienced it themselves, and would be willing to take part. They would have to nominate 3 people with whom they feel they have this special link. So it's not 4 as in the original studies, it's just 3. The receiver would be filmed during the test just to rule out any possibility of any cheating. And the senders could all be going about their daily business, provided that they were ready to respond should the call come, or that they had to make a call. The whole system's automated, and it's run by some software that's on Rupert Sheldrake's website. We're very keen to get people to take part and see whether there just might be anything in this.
Okay, sounds very interesting. Who is your favourite, I suppose is the best word, sceptical thinker? Is there anyone in particular who has, other than Alcock and...
I said Jim Alcock would have to have a special place there,
yes.
And to be fair, I actually still feel very... I'm very chuffed that he is now a personal friend. And kind of to know somebody, who's what you read ages ago, who you now think of as a personal friend. I often blame him for, my life as it now is. But there are lots actually. I think probably if I had to single out one person, it may well be Carl Sagan. I think
right.
Because. I'm a huge fan of James Randi. I'm a huge fan of Richard Wiseman and Susan Blackmore and all these other people. Ray Hyman, who's a fantastic guy, really, really nice. And again, really very influenced by their writings and by their thinking and their whole approach. One of the things about Carl Sagan was his willingness to accept that he may be wrong. And I'm not saying that all these other people don't. I'm just saying that that was a very upfront part of Sagan's scepticism, and I always liked that. But all of those other people are also kind of huge influences and big heroes of mine as well. And I'm sure the list would go on. So anybody I've left out, I hope I've not offended you. But there are some elements to Sagan's approach in particular that really kind of chime with my own feeling on these issues.